Accused of running several telemarketing schemes that cheated people out of millions of dollars. 53-year-old Robert Piero was arrested in Fredonia yesterday, while 73-year-old co-defendant Richard Zeitlin was taken into custody in Las Vegas. The U.S. Attorney's Office in New York says both men misled donors into thinking they were donating money to charities instead of political action committees. Zeitlin used a telemarketer call center business to lie about how donors' monies would be spent. Prosecutors also allege that Piero owned and served as a treasurer for 4 PACs and raised more than $28 million through false statements and representations. Both men are charged with wire and mail fraud and obstruction of justice, which carry a maximum sentence of 100 years in prison. New report